folks? Miguel Iturrate back here. This is our new segment called MMA Museum Classic Fight Review, and I'm joined by friend and cohort Bob Voss to review this latest fight. We are going to take a look at the 2007 match. This is our first match from the 2000s between Matt Lindland and Fedor Emelianenko, which I must say I was the matchmaker for. And the fight went down in Moscow. Bob attended the show and worked behind the scenes, bringing the fighters out. You couldn't do a show without Bob, to be honest with you, back in the day. So Bob is going to bring his particular insight. He was at the show in Russia. Bob, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good. Actually, if you remember, I was judge for that fight.
Okay, so you actually judged the fight. So he's sitting at the table.
Not that it needed a judge, which is my favorite kind of fight to judge. But, yeah, I had good seats. Had Vladimir Putin right over my shoulder, with his pal Jean-Claude Van Damme and his daughter and a bunch of other dignitaries and K1 fighters and whatnot.
Yeah, so Silvio Berlusconi was there also, the old prime minister of Italy as well.
Right.
It's funny, but Bob, Putin's about like half your size. Weren't you blocking him? Were you afraid that he was going to have you removed?
You got to wonder about things. As a matter of fact, this is the only show that I ever went to that we worked together where I had a gun pointed at me very discreetly in the guy's in the sleeve of his thing. I said, we can go wherever we want. And he says, don't. And I looked and there's a little barrel and I said, we'll go this way. So Toy and I went off the other way, but yeah, it was an interesting situation. But yeah, I was a little bit nervous about having him back there.
Hey, presidential security is presidential security,
Right.
and hats off to our old boss Vlad for how, his mom actually was Putin's music teacher when Putin was a child in school, and that's part of the connection that got him to the show. And obviously the fantastic matchmaking of Fedor and Matt Lindland. To be honest with you, one of the things that people may not know about this particular fight is how it came about. And I originally made a phone call to a man called Randy Couture and offered him the Fedor fight.
I heard that guy.
And I had $3 million to pay Randy to get that fight done. Randy had just the week before re-signed with the UFC. He had been free and he had just re-signed with them when he was going to go back. And Randy's exact words on the phone were with me, I'd love to do it. I can't. Just, I already re-signed, but I've got somebody with me who'll do the fight. And he hands the phone to Lindland, and that's how this match came about. At the time, I believe Lindland was probably one of the top 20 fighters in the world. Randy was probably one of the top 3. Fedor, probably number 1. So a slight drop-off, but not a cavernous drop-off. I think Lindland, not cutting weight, came to compete. I think what we're about to see is Lindland very focused. He made good money for the fight, but he wanted it. And, Fedor was a guy, if you look at that camp, Lindland, Chael Sonnen, Dan Henderson, they all wanted a piece of him and all thought, hey, I'll take a crack at the best guy in the world. Very competitive camp, very competitive match. And I think it's a compelling match. It's short, but definitely compelling with a lot of controversy. What do you remember about it before we head into the actual video?
Let's face it. I can't think of a situation where Matt Lindland would have turned down a fight. On short notice, long notice, I just can't think of a situation. At that point in his career, he was willing to fight anyone to advance his name in the sport. Hats off to him. He was a tough guy, and I don't care who you were, you're going to have a tough go if you had Matt Lindland in there with you. But I think he's a naturally smaller guy than Fedor, and yet he was going to take the fight no matter what. And it was an intriguing matchup. People were excited for it. I mean, it was exciting enough to get Vladimir Putin to come there. And so, it was a premier matchup. And,
sold out event. It was on pay-per-view.
I was totally stoked to be there. So let's roll with it.
Without further ado, let's go ahead and roll it. We're going to do a 3, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, go. And so there we have the Bodog logo. You see the kind of tail of the tape here. Lindland is a heavyweight. He fought as a middleweight, but he cut a lot of weight. he came into this fight about 212, 214. Fedor listed at 230, 6 feet tall. The heights, pretty much the same. I think you'll see the physical matchup is not a huge difference once they're together in the ring. Lindland obviously a little slimmer, listed at 212 and a half. That's probably legitimately what he weighed on the scale. So,
Right.
you know, middleweight, light heavyweight is really where he belongs. But to fight Fedor, he was like, I'm not worried about it. And he wasn't worried about it at all here. You got Lindland coming out first. I think you can see that a lot went into this. This is Moscow. A lot went into the show.
Good production.
Yeah.
We did a good job on that one. That's probably the best one, in my opinion, that we did.
Yeah.
Even better than the one with Biff naked and the concert and all that was.
Yeah, I think, when you're in Moscow, the Russian crowd and the Russian people, and we've been there a few times, they're kind of ostentatious. They like nice things, they like their nice things. So I think that here you're in a situation where we had to put on a good show. The screens,
right.
the ramp and everything, kind of modeled after Pride.
The pyro, very ostentatious for us.
Yeah, this was one of the bigger productions we have. We have Ref Troy Waugh. Our hats off to him. And
Sean Brockmole.
So we got, Sean doing the cleanup here. Now, Lindland comes out. You can see the matchup isn't that big. That first punch actually cuts Fedor. You can see Fedor bleeding. And that's a game changer.
Shocked at ringside. Did he cut that?
Watch Fedor. This is the controversy. He's being warned to get off the ropes, and he grabs the ropes again, and he puts his hand on the ropes again. Now, there was a clear takedown that Fedor avoided. He's lifted in the air. Fedor at least avoided one or two takedowns there at the very beginning of the fight from Lindland.
And then Fedor bumps him off the rope.
Yeah, by grabbing the rope. And then, Fedor is not untalented. So he's got a Greco-Roman guy, and he does reverse the upper body lock into him in top position. Lindland here shows he does know what he's doing. Trying to stay close and trying to stay safe. Trying to get half,
so.
Yeah, he wants to get himself to a better position. Fedor trying to advance into the mount, and Lindland is actually he's doing a good job. He's
defending well.
He's trying for a sweep.
He's keeping the one hook in there so that he keeps it kind of in half.
Yeah.
Keeps his knee in, not allowing Fedor to get full mount. So
now here they're going to go. Fedor goes for a foot lock, the leg lock attempt. Yep. Lindland is going to axe kick him a little bit, and Fedor didn't like that, so he came back.
Yeah, it looked like he got him really well in the ribs with that too.
And you could see the cut. The cut could be a game changer. The fight extended itself, and you could see Lindland coming over the back of his head to hit him on the cut. So Lindland was very well aware of what he was doing, and he's trying to open that cut up. We've always had the conversation of, who's going to have the balls to stop this fight? The ref, the doctors, stop it in Lindland's favor on a cut in Russia, with Vladimir Putin there. But, Fedor, Matt Lindland at least was going to try to make it an issue. You see Fedor.
But truly, at this point, it's not that bad.
Yeah, Fedor's he's dry. You can see Fedor got to the mount, and now
finally got the mount, and then he goes for that armbar, pushes Lindland's hip.
Now watch what Lindland does. Lindland's got his hand on his hip, and that's a pretty good defense. You don't need to be grabbing your shorts or anything like that. Just having the hand there is good. Now watch what Fedor does. He moves the leg and grabs the arm all in one motion, and that is the end of the fight. That is the end of the fight.
And there it is.
And I think that there you see why I would consider Fedor the GOAT.
It's little things like that he has he's composed enough to get to something like that. He knew he could do it, or he wouldn't have tried.
Yeah, he's bloodied in the fight. He's at home with a little bit more pressure than, fighting in Japan where people expect him to win. He's fighting a guy who is definitely there to take him out. It's not a guy who's intimidated or trying to survive. This guy came in to win, got him cut in the first. He got away with a little bit. Like, there is the argument that those they should have been broken up and reset when Fedor grabbed the ropes that second time
Right.
by the ref. Lindland definitely had the potential for a takedown that was taken away from him because of the rope grab, and then when they got to the ground, it was in Fedor's favor, not Lindland. So Lindland does have a little bit of a philosophical argument that the ref and the way the fight materialized didn't quite go his way. But once you got to the ground, Fedor's known as a big puncher. He's known as, you know, a guy who's game and very chill in a fight and stuff. But I think here you actually saw some ground technique from Fedor. You know, the half guard, the attempt at the foot lock on the standing position, the move to the mount on a guy trying to keep the half guard, and then obviously the finish with the arm bar where he actually, you know, takes a minute to let go of the arm, or actually not even a minute, it takes a split second to let go of the arm and move Lindland's defenses, get Lindland's defenses out of the way, and then apply the arm lock before Lindland could react. And Lindland, a world-class athlete, didn't have the reaction time that Fedor did in that one, and you know, Fedor took home the win. Like I had mentioned, Fedor, you know, that the fight was offered to Couture first, and when it was Lindland, Fedor was like, oh, you know, if it's not Couture, he's not worried about it. But at some point during the training camp, I got the phone call where they realized that Lindland was a real game fighter, and that
He's
this
a
was
dog, man. That guy's so hard too.
They felt like I had sneaked a much tougher opponent on them than they expected. And just for the record, there were two other guys in the running, and Lindland was the final decision of Bodog to, you know, that's the guy that they approved. Lindland was my first choice for the fight.
Right.
Second choice was going to be
the other two that were you at liberty to say were the other two potential.
Sure. The other guy actually fought Fedor much later, which is Jeff Munson.
Yeah.
Munson had a reputation of being a little methodical, to not say boring. So that's why he fell to number two. Munson actually was considerably less money, so we actually spent the most on Lindland to get the best fight, and I think that we did. The third choice is an X factor because he went on to do great things, and you wonder what would have happened with a young, hungry Roy Nelson.
Right, but I don't think the name recognition was there at that point.
Yeah, that's what it was. He was coming. He was doing well on the Bodog roster, although he had just recently lost to Buffalo Head. So,
the great Buffalo Head fight. So you know, of course, you can beat that horse of the, you know, the ring rope saving him from getting taken down. But I still think at the end of the day, the fight pretty much ends with a submission. As we had talked about before, Lindland had fallen to submission before. I just think that Fedor was just too good at submissions to where Lindland could have gotten through the fight without being.
Yeah, I think once, you know, I think Lindland came out, applied pressure, got to the point where, you know, with the cut, with the attempted takedown that Fedor had to grab the ropes, you know, in order to avoid them. I think Fedor realized, you know, this isn't a game. I got to take it seriously. And then when you get a serious Fedor here, he is still pretty much at the peak of his powers.
Right. And this was not an older Fedor. This was him at his pinnacle, really.
So, you know, you're in a situation where it was going to be tough for Lindland to drag the fight out, make it long. However, and we mentioned it, the big X factor, Lindland on top, hitting him and opening that cut up to the point where stopping it is a consideration. That would have been interesting. Now, Fedor his first loss was to a cut way back when, and it happened in the opening seconds of the fight. So it would have been the equivalent of Lindland landing that punch and then stopping the fight on the cut right at the beginning. Fedor didn't even get off in that fight, and then he avenged the win later. This happened in Japan.
Right.
So, like I said, who's going to stop this fight on Fedor in his home country and stuff? And I don't think Fedor would have said, yeah, you know, I'm cut real bad, I'll live to fight another day. I think he would have.
Right.
He didn't want that either. So, Matt, my hat's off to Matt. I think he gave his all in the fight. I think we got a pretty decent fight in terms of, you know, it would have been better extended into the second or third round.
Right. I
for
would
the
like to
fans,
see
for the
more of it,
people.
definitely.
But I think what we got was definitely a pressure-filled fight and a chance to see the last emperor, like I said, perform. That's something that, you got to see it up close ringside. That's
Wow.
something
And
that's rare. That's something
and
that's people talk about.
all the pomp and circumstance that went with that, and I mean, when we got to Russia, the buzz around camp was Vladimir Putin's going to be there, and boy, everybody was um, just that was all everyone talked about. It was a big event, and that fight capped that big event off. Like you said, I would like to have seen it gone a little bit longer. I know that in the spur of the moment, ideally that fight would have been stood back up and reset. Um, but in the heat of the moment, he had already, like, pretty much by the time the ref got down there, they had already kind of been establishing position, and it just
Yeah,
didn't happen, unfortunately. So,
I know that's why Fedor is the best. And we're taping this in 2023. It's a full, decade and a half after the fight. I was
right.
talking, I was playing online chess, to be honest with you, with a guy from Russia just
Uh,
recently. And I asked him about Fedor. Did he know who Fedor was? And
right.
he laughed. He said, every Russian knows who Fedor is. So,
Well,
that's the key with Fedor is he was a big star, and that comes with a little bit of pressure. He had to perform in this fight because you don't want to do your first fight in Russia in 10 years. He hadn't fought in Russia. This was his return to Russia
right.
under the Bodog flag. That's not the time to, as they say, crap the bed. You know what I mean? So
Well, I remember I used his name in Russia to get a little bit of help. My luggage got lost at the airport in Russia. Horrible thing. Nobody there spoke English. And I was trying to just say something to make a connection with this army guy that was trying to parade me closer to going out. And I'm like, Fedor, he's like, oh, Fedor. And then all of a sudden people are going to help me.
yeah,
And it was really weird because by the time we got to the hotel after stopping to eat and all that, my luggage was in my room. I couldn't freaking believe it. I was ready to go buy new clothes and everything. But by using the name Fedor, I finally got somebody to at least look. So
good deal. Good.
I'm glad everybody knows him there, everyone. So
Yeah, and he deserves the recognition. He's not. It's been a long time, obviously, since we've been around him and stuff, and he carried himself like a champion and with a lot of confidence. But you didn't get that feeling of arrogance or
no,
or
not from
anything
him.
like that. He's a really was down to earth as a person and knew his position real well. So
Absolutely.
it
One of
was
the easiest guys to work with ever.
for sure.
Really, I have a lot of respect for him. He was a very traditional guy, whereas his brother liked to be like very flamboyant with his lifestyle and jewelry and everything. Fedor would show up in a big wool sweater and,
Yeah,
the traditional Russian sweater.
an old
And he
Christmas
didn't,
sweater. Yeah,
his brother's listening to rock music that's death metal and stuff, and Fedor's listening to Russian folk music. There was a big difference between those two guys. And Fedor was like, he was like the middle class hero there, really.
yeah.
The
He
people
fit the role.
related to him a lot better.
He fit the role of common man in his
Yeah,
own way really good, and he deserves all the credit and all the accolades that he has now, and he deserves to be remembered for sure. To me, he's the GOAT. There's no argument about it. If anybody says that he's not the GOAT, they're just simply wrong. That's how I put it. And
I agree with that. I agree with that. If you look at the people that he fought, especially like in Pride and everything, he was fighting everyone.
yeah, and
He got dropped on his head like a cannonball.
everyone looks at that.
He got right up to fight.
To me, the fight that really highlights for me is his fight with Hangman Choi. Because that's a fight that simply can't happen in the UFC because of the weight classes anymore.
Right.
You're talking about fighting a guy nearly double your size. And that's just an X factor onto itself. And the way he handled it, also faced some adversity in there, got an armbar. The guy got out of the armbar, went back to it, and finished with the armbar. The guy, he was relentless. He was on top of the world for so long because he was simply the best. And I was very happy that we were able to signing for this fight. The only sad part is somewhere in this world, there's a contract that he signed and I signed because I was the official matchmaker for it, and I don't have it. So
you would love to have that, right?
I would just, and I wouldn't sell it or anything. I just want it, you know?
Yeah,
and,
right.
I was proud to put this match together and to work with Fedor. It's one of the last few things that I've been able to do in the sport that the UFC never could do, and that is work with Fedor. So with that, we'll leave you guys, and hopefully you enjoyed the fight. I want to thank my friend Bob Voss for his insight and for his stories from Russia where, he was at the show taking care of business there. So we are back. We'll be back with this new segment here at the MMA Museum. Constantly. We'll be constantly looking at fights, and Bob will be back as a guest for sure. We already have some fights planned that we're going to look at.
Awesome. Thank you very much for having me on, Miguel.